Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, all sorts of things. I'm going to be talking about a very eclectic writer, Iain Banks. So this is the next instalment in my ongoing library tour, which is nearly finished. So I am going through what I believe is the last box of books in the attic. But as I said last week, it's a really big box, so I'm doing it one author at a time. And I've got multiple books by each of the authors, so it felt justified. I've got about 10 books to go through today. I've not read all of these. I've read some of them, but not all of them. But Iain Banks is a really fantastic writer, so if you haven't read him, do check him out. I did a review a little while ago of The Wasp Factory, his first novel, which I don't have here because it's in this room somewhere, I'm not sure where. So I did a review of that, so look out for that if you fancy reading a bit more about him. He was a Scottish writer, first published in the 80s, and continued publishing up until his early death in, I can't remember what year it was, but kind of about 2010, that sort of time. So he died of cancer. I found out he had cancer, had a very short amount of time between finding, being diagnosed and dying. So it was a very tragic end for him. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic writer, and split his time between writing stuff as Iain Banks, which is, I guess you would call it literary fiction, but it's all often quite genre-y, so often quite informed by kind of genre tropes and things like that. And then also as Iain M. Banks wrote science fiction, and it's the it's the Iain M. Banks books that I've read less of, although I haven't read all of these Iain Banks books I've got here either. So I'll go through the Iain ones first before the Iain M. ones, and talk about those. So yeah, I discovered Iain Banks when I was about 14, I guess, and immediately read everything I could find by him. At that point, I think he published about 5 books, and I read all of them in pretty quick succession. So the Wasp Factory is the first one that I've read. I think this may well have been the second one I read. So this was his second book anyway, Walking on Glass, which is a really weird book. So it's 3 different stories told in parallel to each other. Is it 3? Or maybe it's only 2 actually. Oh no, it is 3. So there's one about this guy who's in love with a friend of his. There's one about an alien living on another world, and there's this one about this guy who seems to be going crazy, who just kind of locks himself in his flat all the time. And the 3 stories kind of intertwine, but you really have to work at it. But it's a really fun book. His book after that, so his third book, was The Bridge, which I don't have a copy of, which I need to get, which is a very strange book about the Falls Bridge, but told as a kind of weird fantasy type book. His next book after that was, or as Iain Banks anyway, was Espedair Street, which for some reason I've got 2 copies of, as it seems to be my way. 2 copies of a few of the Ian Rankin ones last week. So this is a like a rock and roll novel basically. So it's about a guy who is a rock star, just about his life and his friends and how he came to fame and things like that. So a really fun book from what I remember. I think I've only read this one once, so I do need to read it again, especially as I've got 2 copies. Next up, I'm not sure if this is next sequentially, but I'll talk about it next, is Canal Dreams, which is another book that's quite experimental, but also, like the rock and roll book, is quite fits into a genre. So it's kind of a revenge novel. So it's about a woman who's a violinist who gets assaulted and then takes revenge on the people who assaulted her basically. But it's told in 3 parts, which are, I think, pretty much exactly the same length. So the first part is about kind of her life and her music and things like that. The second part is effectively the assault and what happens to her, and then the third part is her taking revenge. And the third part is like the most kind of balls out action movie type of thing you've ever read. It's really fantastically violent and very satisfying given what she's gone through. So yeah, this is one I'm keen to reread as well. Next up, 2 that I haven't read. First one is The Crow Road. So this is the book that kind of I remember as being the book when all of a sudden everyone was talking about Iain Banks when this book came out, and it was televised. There was a BBC TV series of it. So I think it's about a kind of strange Scottish family. But as I say, I've not read this one, but it is very well thought of. And then A Song of Stone. I've got no idea what this one's about. I definitely have not read this one. Looks like it's about a castle. So maybe it's has a kind of fancy vibe to it. But yeah, another one I have not yet read. So moving on to the sci-fi then. So when I, as I said, went through my kind of Iain Banks phase when I was a teenager, I read his first sci-fi novel, Consider Phlebas, or Phlebas, which I absolutely loved. And then subsequently never read any other sci-fi books by him as well. So I think all of his books are set in, they're not necessarily sequels to each other, but they're set in the same universe, which is referred to as the culture. So I have 5 books here that are set in that culture universe, I believe. So we've got Look to Windward, Against a Dark Background. I'm not sure if this one is a culture one, actually. It doesn't say that it is on the cover. Use of Weapons, The Player of Games, and Matter, which is an absolute chonker. This is 600 pages. Oh, it's got a train ticket in it. From Eastbourne to Brighton, date of travel 27th of September 2018. So that was obviously from the previous owner, because I don't think I've ever read to Eastbourne on the train. So yeah, those are my Iain Banks books. Okay, time to pick a random book from the shelf. So here we have Crash by J.G. Ballard, which I haven't read. So I've read High Rise by Ballard, which I really liked. When I was a teenager, I read Empire of the Sun when that came out. Crash has always fascinated me. The concept sounds amazing about kind of car crashes and sex, basically. But I haven't read it, and I haven't seen the film either. So I'm a big David Cronenberg fan, but I've never seen the film, which was infamous over here in the UK when it came out. So a number of film critics, or one in particular, the film critic for the Daily Mail, Christopher Tuckey, I think his name is, called for it to be banned. And it does seem to be very difficult to get hold of over here. I don't think it's on any of the streaming services anyway, so if I do want to watch it, I will have to try and track down a DVD copy. But yeah, Crash was published in the year of my birth, 1973, which gives me another reason to read it. So yeah, definitely need to get to this one at some point. So if you've read it, let me know what you thought of it. If you got this far in the video, then leave a car emoji in the comments. So yeah, that was my Iain Banks library tour. Let me know if you've read any Iain Banks or what you thought of him. Let me know if there's any of these that I haven't read that you think I should jump on. But as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.